Colorado foster mom takes in baby girl, notices startling similarity to son that defies all odds.
But before we start, please make sure to subscribe to Did You Know and hit the bell so you never miss an upload from us. Also, leave a like right now.
When Katie Page moved across the United States to open a new chapter in her life, she could never have known from the onset that her new change of pace would lead to her becoming a foster mom. The ability to give back and change children's lives was exactly the direction she needed. But in the course of taking care of abandoned infants with special needs, she would uncover a strange mystery. Acting on a hunch, she identified something bizarre that linked two of the children under her care, something that would lead her to the greatest coincidence of her life. In her early 30s, Birmingham, Alabama native Katie Page's marriage had come to an end. But within every ending is the potential of a new beginning, and this one no less. The drastic life change offered Katie the possibility of shifting directions and doing something radically new with her life. She was not quite sure yet what that something was, but the choice she was about to make would lead her to the most extraordinary discovery of her life. Katie was going to become a foster mom, but for now, she had absolutely no idea how that decision would lead to an incredible revelation that would land her and her new family in the spotlight. To begin the new chapter of her life, Katie needed a relocation. She moved across the country to Colorado and started a new job in the commercial construction industry. She bought a 4-bedroom fixer-upper home that would require extensive renovations, much of which she'd have to complete herself. To renovate the home would cost a lot of money, but for Katie, that was a good thing. So as to avoid unnecessary spending, she would need to do repairs herself, which would compel her to stay occupied and focused as she rearranged her life. Living alone in the large home, even with all the life changes she'd made so far, she felt something significant was still missing. The condition of Katie's new home in Colorado meant that she would have to dedicate herself to the project of building it back up to her liking, which included replacing its floors and cabinets. Yet even if renovating the house kept her busy and motivated, Katie was not feeling a sense of satisfaction. She had a vivid, painful moment of reckoning where she looked in the mirror and sobbed at what she saw, because the reflection staring back at her was not the woman she had hoped to be. But one day as she was hard at work, she received an email that would ultimately shift the course of her life. In Katie's inbox was a letter from her local church that she had recently joined. It was describing an upcoming seminar that would detail a program for fostering children in need. After reading, to her surprise, Katie felt immediately, inexplicitly drawn to the idea. She felt she had found her cause. She phoned her mother and asked if she would accompany her to the meeting. Her mother was initially shocked by the thought that her daughter was even considering the idea of fostering, but despite that, in the end, she agreed to go. They went to the church, unsure of what they had in store. As it turned out, the meeting was exactly what Katie needed to hear. Seeing the presentation gave Katie the chills, and learning more about being a foster mom inspired her. Even though she was nervous and scared at the prospect of becoming a foster mom, the thrill of the possibility filled her heart. She was consumed by thinking about the idea. Even if it appealed to her and spoke to her spirit, she had to carefully weigh the options before rushing into it. After all, she was a single mom in a new environment. Even if she was motivated, would she truly be able to cope with the requirements? Katie came to a conclusion. Being a foster mom was worth pursuing. It was exactly the kind of positive, new direction that her life change had allowed for, and she was ready to commit to the enormous amount of responsibility and love that taking care of small children would require. Her mission had presented itself, and it was time to make big moves. On Mother's Day 2015, she finished her application to be a foster mom through the local foster agency and opened the door to an incredible new chapter in her life. It would quickly become far more than she had ever imagined. Shortly after her application was processed, Katie entered her new role as a foster mom with gusto. The cases that came to her were not only children who were without parents, but specifically those children who were suffering from traumas that they had gone through at a very young age. It meant that she would have to dedicate extra time and care and be extremely sensitive to the children's needs. The process of helping them and nurturing them helped her realize she wanted much more than fostering. What had begun from a simple email was about to lead to yet another incredible development. After gaining enough experience as a foster mom, Katie wanted to adopt. She wanted to make parenthood a permanent part of her life. Up until that point, she had taken care of 4 foster kids. Not long after she made her momentous decision, life presented her with the right challenge. She had been taking care of small children who had gone through many difficult and troubling experiences, leaving her equipped emotionally and with enough skill to handle what the foster system gave her. But the next child's situation would be more extreme and would lead her to uncover an incredible mystery. Even though she was already caring for a 14-month-old, the fostering agency asked Katie if she might be able to take on a special case. A baby boy had been abandoned in the hospital by his mother, and he was only 4 days old. And it wasn't just his extremely young age that made his case urgent. He didn't even have a name that had been registered. To make matters worse, the tiny infant had unfortunately been exposed to drugs in the womb. Thankfully, according to the doctors and nurses that had examined him, the infant did not appear to be suffering from withdrawal. Could Katie help him? Despite the fact that she was already taking care of another child, bringing home another would easily stretch her resources and energy thin. But as soon as she heard about the baby's story, Katie instantly knew it was the right choice. Before agreeing, she took 5 minutes to call her mother and ask for a huge favor. Could she come and live with her for a few months to help her manage the babies? Her mother said yes, and the baby came home with Katie. She gave him the name Grayson, convinced that the grace of God had brought him to her. And soon, an aspect of his past that Katie was completely unaware of would come back to her full force. Katie now had a new little man in her life, and he held special meaning for her. For 11 months, Katie and her mother took care of baby Grayson, as care workers tried to find the child's biological parents. They posted in newspapers and searched through the hospital where he had been abandoned. All they had was a first name and the date of birth of his mother, which had been written on his wristband at the hospital. They had hoped that they could perhaps find anyone to help him, but the reality that would await them at the end of their search was far more unusual than they had expected. Unfortunately, despite the extensive search, nobody came to claim baby Grayson. It broke Katie's heart, even though a part of her was relieved that there now wouldn't be a debate over who had the right to parent this special boy. She also dreaded the day that she would have to tell him nobody came for him. Deep inside, this foster mom had undergone a transformation. There was something about this child that set him apart, and she had found a unique place for him in her heart. For now, she made up her mind. Grayson was her son. She was about to take things one giant leap forward. On the day that Grayson reached 11 months, May 25, 2017, it was at last time for his foster mom to make his inclusion in the family a formal reality. His adoption became official, and his name was officially recorded as Grayson Page. At first, although Katie wanted to expand her family even further, she felt she needed to wait. She had good reason to take her time. Because of the drug exposure while he was in the womb, Grayson had developmental and physical struggles that a healthy child would not ordinarily have. He would need extra attention and care, but just 2 weeks after his adoption, she received a phone call. Scarcely any time had passed since Katie had gone from being Grayson's foster mom to being his adoptive mom, but Katie's caseworker at the fostering agency trusted her enough to feel she could confidently take on yet another case. Once again, it was a 4-day-old baby, and this time, the baby was a girl. Sadly enough, this baby girl had come to the fostering agency's attention under the exact same circumstances as Grayson. She had been abandoned at the same hospital, was exposed to drugs in the womb, and was the same age as him at the time she was found. Katie decided to take action and went against everything she had previously told herself. It was a challenging situation to be put in. She had only just taken on a huge and beautiful responsibility for a lifetime. Yet despite what Katie had told herself about waiting to expand her family, she felt compelled to do something. She knew the right thing to do was to take in this baby. And when care workers brought Katie, the baby girl, to her house to meet her new foster mom, although Katie already knew the details of the circumstances under which the infant had been surrendered, she now noticed an additional peculiar coincidence, one that would lead to the greatest shock of her life. Katie was now a single woman managing 2 infants with special needs, a foster mom to one, an adoptive mom to the other. It was then that she found they had something bizarre in common. It could be pure coincidence, but the birth mother's name listed for the baby girl was the same as the one that had been provided for Grayson. The name stood out to Katie and triggered her suspicions because it was a rather unusual one. Out of curiosity, she told her roommate at the time, Ashley Chappa, to watch the children for a moment, as she went and looked for the discharge papers from the hospital that she had been given when Grayson had arrived into her life. Then she found another intriguing clue. After rifling through her file cabinets, Katie managed to locate the original records. She already had her suspicions, but now she could verify them. The birth date of the biological mother listed on the baby girl's bracelet was just 1 day shy of the one that had been listed for Grayson's biological mother. It was uncanny. Katie now began to develop a wild theory. However unlikely, the two children in her care just might have had the same birth mother. Working on a hunch, Katie texted the children's caseworker, but she was told that the idea was ludicrous. Unconvinced, she took on her own initiative that would lead to a development she couldn't have foreseen. The coincidences were far too striking to be ignored, and Katie was now in the depths of research, fascinated by the possibilities. Through rigorous searching, months later, Katie managed to actually track down and sit with the birth mother of the baby girl. It was surreal, but she was determined to get answers. In the course of their conversation, the girl's birth mother confided to Katie information that could possibly support her suspicions. The woman claimed that apart from the infant girl, she'd given birth to another child, one who she'd given up without records. What's more, the woman bore a striking resemblance to Grayson. Katie needed to know for sure. Katie arranged for the children's caseworker to meet with the baby girl's biological mother and figure out the truth as best as she could. Up until that point, Katie had been told there was no way her theory could have been possibly true, despite what she saw as a tremendous amount of overlap between the children's details. The information she had gathered up until then seemed far too real and too credible to be discredited. She had to have the foster agency back her up. The mystery was far too exciting to leave unresolved. Anxiously, she awaited the news from the caseworker. Then her phone rang. Katie was at her office in the middle of work. Her phone rang, and Katie excitedly picked it up, eager. Her caseworker had met with the biological mother of Katie's foster daughter. Baffled and mystified by what she had discovered, she exclaimed, "Katie, I think you're right." Stunned by what she had found, she continued to describe what she had encountered through her conversation with the young girl's birth mother. "Her story breaks my heart. I can't believe it, but I'm 90% sure you're right, and this is a miracle." An hour later, she called back with yet another message. On the second call from the caseworker to the excited foster mom, she at last gave Katie Page the news she'd been waiting for the whole time. She was able to confirm Katie's hunch 100%. They had found the same last name provided on both her foster children's records. Katie had unknowingly welcomed into her home and into her life something absolutely extraordinary. Both the baby girl and Grayson, though they did not look so similar, were actually biological brother and sister. They had both miraculously found their way to the care of the same foster mom. Katie couldn't control herself. After hearing the news, Katie couldn't help but burst into tears of relief and excitement. She couldn't believe what she had heard, and that her suspicions had been right all along. There was something so special about having taken in two children who were innately linked to one another. Just to be absolutely certain, in case there was any reason that all of the information they had received up until now could be discredited, she did a DNA test for both of the youngsters, and the proof was in the genes. Katie had known from the beginning what she had to do, and now the opportunity presented itself. What Katie Page had felt all along about Grayson, she had also felt for this baby girl for whom she had had the privilege of serving as a foster mom. On December 28, 2018, Katie officially adopted the baby girl and gave her the name Hannah. The two children bonded with each other quickly. Katie jokingly referred to them as partners in crime, the yin to each other's yang. Grayson's personality is far more subdued, loving to chill, while Hannah had a penchant for getting rowdy. Yet even though the mystery about their original identity had been solved, there was one last surprise on the way. The caseworkers from the foster agency had been correct to have had some doubts about Katie's initial suspicions. It had been uniquely difficult to track down the children's biological mother for several reasons. Most of all, that she had falsified her surname and altered her date of birth on the bracelet that baby Grayson had been found with. But now that they had managed to locate her and make contact with her, they discovered something else about the birth mother. When Katie had met her children's biological mother, the woman had been pregnant yet again. Her intentions for the third child would add an additional layer to the account that Katie never could have expected at the start of her journey. While the children's birth mother had initially been unclear about her intentions, seemingly wanting her children back, she eventually saw that their foster mom was more than fit to be their permanent parent. 13 months after Hannah was born, her and Grayson's biological mother gave birth to another baby boy. Naturally, Katie committed to taking this newborn into her care, once again stepping back into her veteran role as foster mom. She hopes to adopt the baby and to add to her incredibly unusual family of children, who all by extraordinary chance share the same biological mother and the same adoptive mother.